This episode is brought to you by 4 Pillars Research, a nationwide leader in policy limit searches, now expanding its services to support private investigators working with injury attorneys. Since 2019, 4 Pillars Research has been known for its professionalism and top-tier customer service. If you're a private investigator, you know how crucial it is to provide accurate and complete information to your clients. Research can be time-consuming and challenging, especially when accuracy is non-negotiable. That's where 4 Pillars Research comes in. Unlike other firms that outsource their work, 4 Pillars handles everything in-house, ensuring you receive precise policy limit details of the at-fault party before litigation even begins. With 4 Pillars, you get more than just data. Each client is paired with a dedicated client engagement specialist, ensuring personalized service and meticulous attention to detail. And for those of you handling multiple cases, they even offer loyalty programs for high-volume clients. So if you're looking to elevate your investigative work and provide your clients with the best possible service, contact 4 Pillars Research today. Let them handle the complex research so you can focus on delivering results. That's 4 Pillar Research, your trusted partner in policy limit research. Reach out now and take your investigative services to the next level. Do you enjoy our podcast and the guests we bring you? Since 2019, Matt and his team have done their very best to give you amazing shows each week. If you feel like our show has helped you to be a better investigator, or maybe even inspired you to become an investigator, please let us know. We're looking for testimonials. Drop Matt an email with a recorded 20 to 30 seconds of you talking about this podcast. You can also email him something verbal about the website. His email is matthews@satellitepi.com. And if you really feel blessed for having this content, consider supporting Matt and our show by joining Investigator's Toolbox. You really have to see version 2.0. And at just 49 cents a day, it's a no-brainer. Private investigators, are you spending hours digging through online data? There's a better way. Scope Now is your all-in-one OSINT platform, automating the collection and analysis of publicly available information, so you get results faster. Workbench helps you uncover key details on individuals and businesses. Link analysis connects the dots between entities, and pre-check flags potential risks in seconds. Plus, with Grid, you'll get real-time intelligence alerts, keeping you ahead of emerging threats. Stop the manual searching. Let Scope Now do the heavy lifting. Learn more at scopenow.com. Satellite Investigations has launched its new website full of great new content. Matt and his team have released some great informative blogs. Make sure you log in to LinkedIn and follow Satellite Investigations for the latest content. Welcome to the next episode of PI Perspectives. Today, we have investigator/paralegal Troy Fleming joining the show. Troy has over 39 years experience working as an investigator for a law firm that specializes in product liability cases. How do you investigate these cases? Well, Troy has some great insight. And it all starts with freedom of information. So please welcome Troy Fleming and your host, New York Private Eye, Matt Spaier.
And welcome everyone to this week's episode of PI Perspectives. This is Matt Spaier, your host. Today, I am really thankful and is long overdue to have my friend Troy Fleming come on to the program. And we've got a really interesting topic. So, Troy, I want to welcome you to the program.
Thank you, Matt, for having me.
Yeah,
invitation.
We've talked about this for a long time, and I'm glad that we finally set aside some time to jump on and talk. And you've got a very interesting career because not only do you do investigations, you also are on the paralegal side as well. And you have a different perspective on the work you do. And I'd met you through the National Association of Legal Investigators. I believe that's one of the conferences. Is probably where we first connected.
Yeah.
But for folks who don't know you, tell them a little bit about your background and how you got into the business.
Yeah. So, Matt, I've been I pretty much kind of try to identify myself as a legal investigator, and that is through NALI, the National Association of Legal Investigators, which I've been a member of for 20 years. But I have actually been doing product liability work for 39 years now.
Wow.
I started my career in North Carolina with a law firm there. part-time, and within 6 months, I went to the partners and basically expressed that, for currently what I was doing at that time, which was interviewing police officers, eyewitnesses, taking photographs of crash scenes and taking photographs of bodily injuries, that there could be a lot more done. And basically, they told me, here, it's your department, take the reins and go, where you'd like with it. And 15 years later, we had opened practices in Raleigh, North Carolina, the Outer Banks, and Wilmington.
Wow.
And the firm has basically pretty much covered Eastern North Carolina.
Okay. So is it just Carolinas, or do you do national work also?
National work, and I also then my second I was with that firm for 15 years, and then I was retained by a firm up in Virginia that specifically specialized in nothing but product liability cases.
Right.
And so they also specifically specialize in litigation. So when we took on a case from day one, I worked that case as if we were going to trial.
Right. I think that's how you got to approach it. I mean, anytime you're working for a lawyer, you
Yeah,
have to take that look and say, like, okay, what's the end game here? Like, who's going to be looking ultimately at my work product? Is it going to
exactly.
be a juror, or is it going to be an attorney? Like just having that mindset that you have to produce a product that everybody understands, knowing that the everyday man and woman, the juror in that particular county may be the one ultimately looking at it, right?
Right, exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah, and then it puts you in a position too throughout the case, that you're prepared. In a year and a half or 2 years later, you've got all the documents. If there's anything that might have, been either, like a 911 call, maybe if it's that particular department only holds them for 3 months, you've covered all those bases because
Right.
again, from day one, you're going to litigate that case. And that's how, I was trained. And so, and actually, I've had a great career and opportunity to work with some fantastic attorneys that have also invested in me.
Right.
Well, and so, I'm just a product of those firms.
Yeah. I mean, your scenario there it's an interesting one, because I think not everybody that gets into the work that we do has the ability to work kind of in-house like that and kind of set policy from the get-go, right?
Yeah, yeah,
Uh,
exactly. And to share with your viewers, again, and you just mentioned, I've been on staff my entire career, so I've never been in the practice, a private practice. So yes, I have been, on staff my entire career.
yeah, it's kind of like a similar background for me, like no law enforcement background, right? I never was a cop before I started doing what I'm doing. I worked in-house for an attorney as well, not quite 39 years.
Yeah,
I did about 4 years before I failed to, jump ship and got into something else. But I really, like, I appreciate the folks that you worked for that kind of gave you the leeway to run with it and talk about, the foresight to kind of let you do your thing. It's really forward thinking for sure.
yeah, and by doing that, they allowed me to, or by giving me those reins, it allowed me to make contacts. And I'll tell you, within my profession, which is the products liability, and I've gotten recently in the past 4 years in the aviation investigations as well. But the contacts that I've made over the last 39 years are priceless. I tell people all the time, I'm not really that smart. I just know the person to call.
Right. Well, I mean, I think we preach that in
Yeah,
Nelly and any other association, right? It's always better to know the guy or girl than be the guy or girl, right?
yeah, right, exactly. And,
Yeah.
and early in one of the things I'll share with the viewers too, early in my training was the attorneys taught me, look, we can retain or hire someone, but if they're going to come back to me and tell me, vehicle number one ran the stop sign, I already know that. That's on the crash report. Troy, what I need to know is why did vehicle number one run the stop sign?
Yeah.
That's what you need to tell me, and that's what you need to base your investigation on.
What would you say to the everyday investigator, the person who's contacted by the law firm for a products liability case? Like, what type of insight or what type of investigative work? Yeah, when you're forming that game plan to how to approach this, how do you approach doing these investigations?
Well, there's number one, what we're looking for is the injuries. Product liability cases are extremely expensive to work up, And so because I'm retaining experts right out of the gate.
Right.
It could be an engineer, it could be an accident reconstructionist, depending on the type of case. So they're very expensive cases to work. And as a result of that, you have to have serious or catastrophic injuries. The second thing I'm looking at, again, right out of the gate, is do we have the product? If it's a vehicle, have spoliation preservation letters been sent out? If I'm retained by another firm.
Right.
But that's within the first 24 hours, we've got to get those spoliation preservation letters out. If it's a product, if it's a car seat or another type of product, we've got to have the product. A lot of times in these cases, if you don't have the product, you don't have a case, because in order for us to find or discover, hey, what's the defect or what's the design flaw or the mechanical failure here, it's hard to argue that without the product. So my first two things are injuries and do we have the product? And are the injuries, do we have causation to connect the injuries with the defect?
Yeah. I remember years ago, there are two products liabilities cases I can think about that I worked on, and both were motor vehicle cases. So one of them was it was a steering malfunction on a Lincoln Continental, and there had been an icy situation, and it was a really sad story. Father and mother were driving a kid up to college. They were probably going a little bit faster than it should have been. Um, they lost control of the vehicle, went down an embankment. The car rolled, and the mother became paraplegic. And it was a question about the steering column because there was a recall on the steering column, and there was a question with regards to one of the tires too. So there was a tire that was missing. And what was interesting is like we had video of the wreckage of the vehicle being put onto a tow truck, right? The news cameras had showed up and they had a video going, and the tire was missing. And there's a question of like, okay, was the tire on the tow truck just put somewhere else on the tow truck, or was it like buried somewhere in the woods or whatever? And it was again a snowy situation. Had it snowed again and it was covered up, because I think I wanted to do a site investigation like maybe a week later, a couple of weeks later, and there had been more snow. And man, we looked all over for that tire and could not find it. But there was a problem in the steering column, and they were just trying to find it. And I remember I went probably 3 or 4 times to a warehouse where they stored the vehicle to look at the steering column, basically test it and see if it was meeting the criteria. I was basically doing the groundwork for the engineer. Do you see something like that happen initially when you do your work?
Yep. I've had a similar case. The tire was actually, it was a tire missing. We did go back out to the scene and we did discover the tire up in the woods where it had come off the vehicle and traveled up into the woods, in which that crash was at night. So the tow truck record driver, obviously he cleaned up the scene the best he could.
Yeah.
But when we got the case and went and looked at what we call our inspection, we noticed the tire missed. Fortunately, in this case, we were retained pretty quickly in the case.
Yeah.
And so we were able to go out to the scene and canvass the scene and discover the tire.
Yeah.
In that case. So yes, I've had experienced the same exact thing.
Yeah, and that's you brought up a very important point, right? Getting out there as soon as possible to recover evidence, whether it be actual parts of the vehicle or video evidence, or there's sometimes they use drones to go up and look at the area just to kind of get a sense of what's going on, because sometimes these cases start off as product liability on a recall for a vehicle, but they also turn into a design defect of the highway, right? And that's another place where you're talking about catastrophic injuries, where the valuation of a case can increase substantially when you start talking about a state or a municipality that's responsible for maintaining a roadway that was designed improperly. You probably see some of that too, right?
Right. And I want to share with your viewers, if they're working with a law firm, or actually, if they get that opportunity to speak in front of an attorney's conference, explain to them, or offer them, hey, if you have a client with catastrophic injuries, let me look at that case. It's not going to, I'm not going to charge you to look at it, but let me look at it and see. And I'm going to quote this, is there a product liability case hidden in either your workers' comp case, your personal injury case, your slip and fall case? If there's catastrophic injuries like a TBI, traumatic brain injury, or we have paralyzation, I would press that point to the attorney, or if you're working even for an insurance company, workers' comp can get reimbursed, if there's a verdict or collection in a product's case. So it's to their benefit, also to say, hey, look, take a look at this case. So to your viewers, if they work for firms or retained by firms, stress to them, hey, let me look at this case and see, again, is there a potential hidden product liability case here?
Yeah, that's a great idea. I mean, looking at other avenues, because I think attorneys are always looking to identify any potential defendants, and that definitely opens another window. The other case that I worked on that I thought was really interesting involved a Ford GT 500. So if you're familiar with that car, there weren't many of them made. There were about 200 made in the United States, and this case probably about 10 years old. So a guy goes out and buys this car, and he's driving around Long Island, New York, and life is good. And he loses control of the car and crashes into a tree. And the car is pretty much the front end of it's just destroyed, and he ends up losing a leg. Right? So he recovers, obviously without a leg, and he's now trying to he was a real estate guy and he made a lot of money, right? So he loved that car, and he was like, you know what, I want to get another one. I know I can't drive it again. So he contacts a dealer in Texas, and he's talking to the dealer, and the dealer says, yeah, I sorry you lost your leg and all that other stuff, but did you hear about the recall? Recall, what are you talking about? He said, yeah, there was this a malfunction in the transmission where the engine just pretty much seizes and the car powers down from it. He goes, oh, really? Right. So, of course, now lawyers are involved with all that products, recall here. And I got hired where I came in on this is there was a discovery and inspection. So this vehicle was housed in a warehouse out in Long Island, and I was hired by the attorney to basically video and photograph the discovery and inspection as the engineer was essentially pulling this car apart. Right. So it was about 5-6 hours. Finally gets to that part of the transmission that he was looking for. And it was like a eureka moment. He said, got it. What are you talking about? He said, look at these bolts over here. Do you see the notches in the bolts? I was like, yeah. He goes, you see one on this bolt and one on the transmission block. I was like, yeah. He goes, they're supposed to be lined up identical. He goes, do you see how they're at like a 90-degree angle, or they're not lined up they're supposed to be? I said, yeah. He goes, that's your case right there. I was like, oh man, wow, that's crazy. And it was amazing to see him basically strip this car down. And if you know that car, it looks like the Batmobile. And it was just a crazy thing. And I don't know how the case turned out. I never, we never really see it, but to be a part of that and see it at work was super fascinating.
It is. And, the recalls and, to share with your viewers, when they're doing their due diligence in these cases, whether it's a products case or it could be, it could be food, or it could be a consumer, case or it could be something work related. Make sure that you, look into, NHTSA, the National Highway Traffic Safety Administration, OSHA, NTSB. Make sure you're looking at all those sites to look for recalls, or what we call them OSIs, other similar instances as well, because in the CPSC, the Consumer Product Safety Commission, may not be a recall, but consumers will write in or file a complaint against a product. And in your due diligence and research, if you're coming across consumers who have written in and complained, then if there's a lead right there that's telling you, the investigator, so that you can share with the attorney, hey, there are other cases out there that the same thing is happening.
Yeah. So from an investigative standpoint, I mean, do you get the green light at that point to start reaching out to these people, taking statements from them, just kind of understanding the issues and problems that they had?
Now, oh, do you mean like when I see a consumer write in?
Yeah. Yeah. If you see somebody that
Um,
maybe had a similar issue, have you ever been
I've
out?
not reached out to them individually. Basically, what I've done is or how I say, well, if you don't reach out to them, then what are you doing? I basically do a FOIA request
Okay.
to that government agency,
Yeah.
requesting information regarding that particular product or that particular, yeah.
Yeah. So what we're doing there is you're creating something called actual notice, right?
Mhm.
So the idea is that the manufacturer was aware of these particular problems and didn't have a good, uh, method in place on how to correct that problems. It helps with liability establishing that, right?
It does. You're trying to determine, how long did this company know, how long were they aware of this particular, issue?
Yeah. Have you ever come across any like whistleblower situations where you have somebody that maybe worked for one of these places said, "Yeah, we knew about it."
Um, Not a whistleblower, but in depositions of, what we call, put up your best corporate rep, to
Right.
answer, and we have to give them the issue that we're asking about, and they'll put up their representative. We have discovered it, yes, through
Yeah.
either discovery or through the corporate rep
Yeah.
for that particular matter. But I haven't experienced an actual whistleblower. Now we have gone in and um, looked for former employees and interviewed them.
Right. Yeah, I think what's interesting these days too, and I don't know if you've come across this, but I own a couple vehicles. Actually, I own a fleet of vehicles, like people working for me, right? So you get these recall notices, and it tells you, so and so, here's a notice on a recall, and then they go for talk about the solution, and they
Mhm.
say we have no solution at this point. We're working on it, or those
Mhm.
parts aren't available at this point. We'll get back to you when we have a solution for this. And I'm referencing this in relation to electric cars. So I've got a couple electric cars that the charging system, the actual charger itself, like there was a recall on it, and they're like, yeah, it may cause fires. By the way, we don't have a solution for it, so we're just telling you that there's a problem here, right?
Wow, that's scary. And I'll tell you, this is a new era we're stepping into. In my 39 years, and I'll give an example. If it's a defective, we talked about a tire a little bit earlier. If it's a defective tire, I can go to the warehouse where we store our vehicles, and I can physically put my hands, touch and feel that tire. With the new, EVs, electric vehicles. An electric vehicle could be a scooter. It could be a motor. It could be a
Right,
bike, a motorcycle, or a car.
right,
These new EV electric vehicles, the software, the data is in the cloud, and and the company, and I'm not going to pick on any particular manufacturer, but they're holding that they're holding that data, and where, like I said, in the old days, looking back, I had the tire, so I could go look at the detread or the defect, but now. As we proceed forward into this, new era of electric vehicles and things like that, the manufacturer actually has control over that data that I do not.
yeah. And what's strange too, or it's just a little, you got to shake your head a little bit when you start talking about like data and black
Mhm.
boxes and video recovery off some of these systems that pretty much have video cameras all over the cars, right? We're not going to pick on anybody, but
Yeah,
there are vehicles out there that have lots of cameras on them. Uh,
yeah.
the
And again, right away. So again, right away, as an investigator, you want to get that preservation spoliation letter
right,
out
yeah,
to that manufacturer
yeah,
right away, and letting them know that, hey, we're involved in this particular case, and please don't delete or do anything that would compromise the data or evidence in this particular case or crash or wreck.
yeah. And I guess the point I was making here is the technology to retrieve that data, meaning the cables,
Mhm,
computer system,
mhm,
very pricey. And
mhm.
it's interesting because each manufacturer has their own proprietary cable.
Right.
So if you're in that business, you've
Yeah.
got like like it's like a jacket you open up with the watches. There's no watches anymore. Now there's just cables of
Right.
the particular cable you need to download the system. Uh,
Yep.
it's
You're
crazy.
right. And everybody does have their own special connector cable.
It's very, very crazy, man. I've talked to some reconstructionists about it, and it's super frustrating for them because there's just new model, new cable.
Yeah.
That's the way it works.
And for your viewers too, we're talking about cables, and you talked about a minute ago a black box. Now we've got the infotainment center systems, which is a separate separate system. So now we've got those as well. In addition, and those infotainment systems, right now today we're discussing product liability, but think about, in a criminal case, a timestamp that data, can assist and reveal. So it is a lot of thinking outside the box in these cases.
Right. No pun intended.
Yep.
They're all in boxes.
Yep.
Well, this is a good spot to actually take a break. So I think we'll tap out here. And when we come back in, I want to talk about the different types of product liability cases there are, because when we're talking really about vehicles, but there are other things. We said things with batteries, electric vehicles, scooters, things of that nature. So let's touch on that when we come back and just kind of expand things out. So everybody sit tight, and we'll be right back.
Check out the PI Institute of Education at piinstitute.com. Since 1989, Kelly Riddle has been teaching on subjects such as surveillance, nursing home investigations, insurance fraud, domestic investigations, hidden assets, and accident scene investigations. The PI Institute of Education is a featured learning partner in the investigatorstoolbox.com. So check out the free content on the site, then visit the Institute for more great savings on additional classes. Managing a team of investigators just got easier with TrackOps, the all-in-one case management software. Are you ready to enhance case flows and drive efficiency? TrackOps offers powerful management and coordination tools to streamline workflows and communication, all designed to keep your team synchronized and focused on the task at hand. With TrackOps, you can easily distribute workloads, track individual performance, and ensure deadlines are met. Plus, the TrackOps mobile app allows investigators to access case activities on the go. And the TrackOps video app allows for simple and consistent timestamping, all included at no extra cost. Start streamlining your investigation process today. Visit trackops.com for a free 15-day trial and experience the power of efficient team management. TrackOps, empowering teams, simplifying management. Over the past year, our industry has been the target of foreign governments and agencies that have attempted to recruit unsuspecting investigators to gather intelligence or immediate expatriates. PI Perspectives is teaming up with the Federal Bureau of Investigations to get the word out about this ongoing crisis. If you've been contacted by an individual or company that might seem suspicious, please contact the FBI at tips.fbi.gov. You can also contact the New York field office at 212-384-1000 to report suspicious activity in any state. The link is also in the show notes. Even if you completed a job and it still doesn't sit right with you, you can report this activity. The only way to stop this trend is to work together. So let's do it. Want to learn with some of the best legal investigative minds and make great networking connections? The National Association of Legal Investigators is having its annual conference on June 12th and 13th in Arvada, Colorado. There's a great lineup of investigators and lawyers booked to speak. Visit NALI.com to learn more about this great event. You don't want to miss the new speakers and topics. That's NALI, NALI.com.
And welcome back to PI Perspectives. This is Matt Spaier, your host, here with my good friend Troy Fleming. Troy, welcome back to the program.
Thanks again, Matt.
We are talking all things product liability and investigations. Definitely a niche topic to our industry, but something that, as we were discussing earlier, there's value there in the investigative side of it. So before we took the break, I was talking about the different types of product liability cases. We were talking a lot about car accident type stuff. So what are some of the other product liability cases or types of cases that you've seen come across your desk?
Yeah, Matt. So one currently working on, I'm sure everyone's familiar with, I'm going to refer to it as a knee scooter. When you break a foot, twist an ankle,
Sure.
You've seen people on the scooter with their knee, instead of using crutches or a wheelchair, they'll use a knee scooter. And so this particular one, we discovered many things within a defect of that particular knee scooter. And one thing I want to share, I haven't shared yet with the viewers, when we take on a product case, we purchase what we call exemplars. The exemplars, the reason for those is obviously with the subject vehicle subject evidence, you don't want to do anything in any way to alter that at all. And so we purchase exemplar, models. And that's what we do our testing on. That's what we kind of get our hands on. That's the ones that our experts look at so
Sure.
that they get a good idea. And in this particular case, we discovered several things. Number one, it was tipped forward. It wasn't balanced or designed. And what I mean by that is the actual steering wheel was placed exactly straight up and over the front axle. And so there, if that particular scooter were to hit anything, you've got momentum going forward. And if that stopped, the momentum didn't stop. The momentum of the body kept going forward, and then there was a tip hazard. So what we discovered is that the front axle actually should have been designed forward of the handlebars to prevent that, that tipping issue. Another thing we discovered is this particular scooter, and these are things, again, that the investigators really have to think outside the box. Another defect that we discovered is this particular scooter was also, in our opinion, had the wrong tires. And what I mean by that, I didn't know this also until I started doing this work. It's amazing the things we learn. Is there are particular types of material. I mean, a tire could be made of rubber or plastic. So depending on where that particular wheel is going to be, if it's going to be, on carpet, for example, they may move more towards a plastic wheel. But outdoors, where you're coming across different types of, terrain, you may want to look at a rubber vehicle, something that's going to be a little bit more flexible and giving. We discovered that, again, in our opinion, the improper wheels were not used. That was the second thing we discovered. The third thing we discovered in our exemplars, and I had actually purchased quite a few exemplars, is that the steering, the handlebars, the steering wheel, left and right wasn't the same radius.
Wow.
Then we discovered it was different on every one of our exemplars. So what that was doing to the mind, when you ride, when you do something, you get accustomed to maybe where the stop bar is or things like that. Well, on these, it was different on each one of these. And so it's been a very interesting case to work, just to look at, hey, not only did we discover one design flaw or defect, we discovered several.
That's crazy. You end up becoming an engineer, right?
Yeah.
That stuff, right?
Yeah. In another case, we had a car, because you have, we had a cart, like your all-terrain vehicles, that you see people on farms and
like an ATV,
hunters use, or things like that.
Yep.
Farm attendants. This particular client had reached up to get into the ATV, reached up, grabbed the handle, and the handle snapped, and he fell, and it resulted in a traumatic brain injury because his head struck the concrete.
Ooh.
We discovered the defect in that particular case was the materials within the handle. And so, again, very interesting types of cases. Getting into this new software, EV vehicles, but several cases involving skateboards. And the skateboard would actually get up to about 19 miles an hour. When it would get to that speed, which was the max, the software would tell itself, hey, we're at max speed, we need to back off a little bit. And so they called that a pushback. Well, what the defect was, it was not pushing back. And pushing back means slowly applying.
It's probably pull on brakes, right?
Yeah. So what it would do, the defect in the software, is it came to an abrupt stop.
Yep.
And as a result of that, at 19 miles an hour, it was ejecting the rider.
Yeah.
And that could be ejecting him into a wall. It could be ejecting him out into traffic.
I think, yeah.
And so, again, there's a software issue that we discovered and a defect. So it's different. In that case, it was a software issue, and in the ATV, it was a materials issue. And then looking back at the knee scooter, it was a design issue.
So fascinating. I know, like when we had a conference a couple of years ago down in St. Petersburg with Nally. One of the things that we did at the end of the conference, I've talked about this before, but I'm going to talk about it again because I thought it was really, really cool. We did like a round table, right? So we had like a group of investigators, and it was just kind of like a spur of the moment thing. Hey, we're going to have breakout sessions, 8 to 10 investigators. Here's the topic of what we're talking about here. Let's get around a group here and start talking about it. And one of the things we were talking about was product liabilities. I think that's where we first came up with the idea to do this episode.
Yeah.
It's like, hey, this is like very cool. We should talk about it on air for people. But that free flow, and it was so great to see, that there were several investigators at that particular conference that do this kind of work, and the theme there, the theme between everybody was FOIA and getting documentation to support your theory. I mean, that is a big part of trying to connect the dots, right?
It is, and almost all the government agencies are now online. So meaning, in the old days, prior days, we were sitting in a letter, and requesting a FOIA letter. Now, actually, they are wanting you, the investigator, to go online, and there's actually a FOIA online that you fill out, depending on which government agency. But yes, now it's all done online.
Everybody's got portals.
Yep.
The portal for this, portal for that.
Yeah.
Then you get your acknowledgement letters and all that. Good times.
Yeah, and going back to what you mentioned about the round table, I was there. It's priceless. I'm a member of another association, and that's where that idea came from. That we did that the last day of our conference.
Yeah.
Each year, and we call it the round table. And to me, it was sometimes the best part of the conference, because you're sitting there with some of the best investigators, from all over the world, and you're throwing an idea out, and then somebody it just blows your mind. I didn't think of that, because we get so heavy in the weeds. And then when you share with somebody and they're scratching their head and they just ask this simple question, or they may even know, either of an expert that you may want to follow up with, or they may be investigating the same type of case and you don't even have an idea, and you're sitting there in the same room with them.
Yeah, it's great. I've started, me personally, venturing out to other conferences other than investigator conferences, which aren't important. I'm not downselling any stuff. Like if you're an investigator, you need to go to the investigator conferences, because the networking and the connections are really important. But I've started to venture out to the attorney conferences as well, right? So the AAJ, Mass Torts Made Perfect, like that kind of stuff. And I think that's where you get in the weeds with this stuff. That's when you start meeting the litigators that do this type of work. And they're like, okay, so as far as investigations goes, this is what's important to me and why. How can you help me get that information? And it's expensive to go to these conferences, because the attorneys blow things out. They don't stay in a $200 a night hotel. They're staying in $500-700 a night hotels, and it's usually 4 or 5 day event. Or if you want to get a table there, it's $10,000 for a table. Like it's a lot to go to these things. But the networking, what I'm finding, is meeting some really interesting people that are doing some interesting work.
And let me share something with you I found interesting. The first aviation conference I went to 4 years ago, and by the way, that's a tight group. You see a lot of the same players at those conferences. That was my first one, so I stuck out. I was kind of the new guy in town. It was very interesting. I'm in line to get coffee, and at a break, and this attorney asked me, he says, "Hey, what do you, I've never seen you at these. I've been coming to them for 20 years." Introduces himself, discovers my background, and by the time I got my coffee, he wanted to send me 4 firearms cases that he wanted me to look at regarding to see if there's a potential defect. And I'm at an aviation conference, and I end up picking up 4 cases. We're just standing in line, getting coffee.
Yeah, that's how it works, man. And then that's the beauty of it. I find a lot of business gets done at dinner. So sometimes even going to those conferences, like I kind of I hack a little bit, meaning that I don't necessarily buy a ticket to go in, but I
Mhm.
know some of my clients are going to be there, and they're going out to dinners, and they're
Yeah,
doing their after hour networking, and
yeah,
I get the invite, and I get the invite, and I get the introduction.
yep,
Hey, this is my investigator. This is my guy. He's really good.
yeah,
I just had something recently actually where I was in Nashville in that situation. I'd actually gotten a ticket for this event, but I got invited out to dinner with some of the people there, and I met a guy, and this was July last year, and he
mhm,
literally called me like a week ago, and it's like,
mhm,
I had your card, I finally
yeah,
got something for you,
yeah,
and it's a massive case for I'm now working on, and I was like,
yeah,
okay.
yeah.
Nashville
That's
was a cool city, and it actually paid off. Like
yeah,
I'm actually getting work out of it. So
yeah, yeah. And to share with your viewers what we're discussing, if they get the opportunity at these attorney conferences, if they get the opportunity, they could be a speaker.
yes,
They want to grab that. They want to take advantage of that, and they can speak it. You know, pick something. But and I'll tell you, the attorneys are fascinated.
love
With
it.
a lot of work.
I love
So
it. Yeah, it's not the same, stuff they hear all the time.
yeah,
I found that even your local bar association, like
hmm
you should be doing that. Just going and talking about what you do, like it's such a driving technique to grow your business.
yeah.
Uh, just talking about what you do, and
And Matt, I go to these attorney conferences, and I go to these, the local county, city, and state bar, and there are no private investigators at these conferences. So I mean, you've got the whole audience, and you're that in that situation, you're not the little fish in the pond, you're the big fish because you may be the only PI there, the only investigator attend that conference, and you've got the entire audience's attention.
if you're doing it right, you got a couple clients in the audience too that are going to be
Yeah.
giving testimonials. What I like to do in situations like that is I like to do not just like roundtable stuff, but just open it up for comments and open it up for give me a case you're working on. Like,
hmm
so I'll go and I'll present some of the cases I've worked on and some of the things I've done, and then I'll save like 10 minutes saying, okay, well, let's talk about something you have, and how do we solve that problem? And that has been a great technique. It's a little crazy to ask a question you aren't prepared for, but I've been doing this for 20 years, so I like to challenge myself and throw myself under the bus every now and then
Right.
to get
Right.
it done. But it's been fun, man. I really enjoy that aspect of the business of what we do, just kind of trying to spitball.
It is, and like I said, I've been doing this 39 years, and I'll be the first to say, I'm still learning 39 years later, and I love to present to other investigators and see what they tell me. Here's my case. Here are the circumstances. Tell me what you think. And majority of the time, they're sharing with me something, either a road I should go down or an avenue to go down that I didn't even think of.
Yeah,
And because we get, the person who's that files it's assigned to get just so deep into the weeds of the case that we sometimes hey, keep it simple stupid,
yeah.
but we don't, because we're trying to find the that needle in the haystack, when actually the haystack may be, did you think about that? I didn't think about that. No.
You're 100% right, and like the benefits of the that roundtable at that time
mm
down in St. Pete, like that's what was happening, right? These
Yeah, it was.
conversations, and I know you and I immediately after chatting go, man, I wish we had like another half hour, 45 minutes. Like we totally like
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
there was something going on there,
Yeah.
with everyone going back and forth, and that's the benefit of Nally, right? You get people that have been around for a long time doing the
hmm
same type of work that you do, being able to have those conversations. And I know there's another conference, the annual's coming up in Colorado in
Yeah.
any of the listeners, if you're considering associations, Nally's definitely one, if you work with lawyers, that you 100% have to be a part of, and try and make it out to Colorado. I
Mhm.
mean, it's
Yeah.
Colorado, for crying out loud.
Yeah. Yeah, and I've found members that are willing to share. And for those of your viewers that do not know me, and Matt, this through me, is I don't mind sharing.
Yeah,
I'm happy to share. I'm happy to make our profession look as good as we can
sure.
when we're out there. Not only to the law firm, but hey, we're representing people with catastrophic injuries, or in a criminal case it may be significant time or something like that, or ruin a reputation. So if I can help another investigator, who's representing a family that's either lost a loved one or have catastrophic injuries that has affected their life forever. If I can help, I look at it, I want to help that client and help that investigator. So I will share, I've got 39 years of, to share.
Yeah. And there's a lot of people in the industry that are like that. I mean, listen,
There are.
reason why we do this podcast, right? Just getting the word out on these different types of investigative work, like who the people are that know how to do this stuff. I know 2 days ago, or somebody had reached out to me that had a question about workplace investigations, and I was like, Kelly Riddle, talk to Kelly about it. And the person literally texted me yesterday, hey, I connected with Kelly, and he gave me a lot of really good ideas on how to go about it.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Yeah, I mean, that is the spirit of what we do. And it's on us to keep that profession at a certain level. By us, I mean folks that have been doing this for a while, to make sure that those that are coming up underneath us understand the right way to do things, and how to keep that level of profession up there, the quality of work. So before we wrap up the episode, I wanted to ask one more thing, and get your take or your opinion on AI and product liability cases. How have you seen AI affect the investigations for product liability cases, and where do you think things are going in the next year or two?
So I know I'm going to get some disagreement here, but I love AI. I really do. I think it's an incredible tool for investigators. I'll give you one example. That I've recently used. I had a particular case, and I typed into AI, John Smith, is walking down the street, and this, ABCD happens. Draft for me a questions to interview witnesses regarding the scenario I just explained. And the questions that it drafted were amazing.
Nice.
So, all I did was put in the kind of the facts. I didn't put in names. I just put in the scenario, and I asked it, based on the scenario, draft questions in regards to interviewing witnesses. That's one way for an investigator, and a tool that that was priceless in the sense of you're making sure that you're prepared going into that interview, and that you're not going to miss a question, because when we interview witnesses, you get that one shot, and after that,
hard and fast, man.
but other ways, to use AI in products liability cases, again, you can feed AI the scenario of what the issue is. The vehicle number one is going down the highway, and the driver, as you mentioned earlier about the steering column, maybe the driver, either has no steering, or the accelerator is, accelerating, and they can't get it to stop, and their foot's off the accelerator, but it's still going faster. Are you aware of any other situations? And it'll break down. It'll tell you, where to look, where to do your research.
Sure.
It gives you suggestions on where to do the research. It gives you suggestions on what questions to ask. And it'll give you, sometimes it'll even give you case law. In the sense of, in Maryland, you might want to look at this particular case. So again, it's a tool that I have found that kind of really gets your mind and the gears spinning right out of the gate, and help you with your research and your investigation.
Awesome. Great. Well, Troy, thank you so much for coming on and making yourself available to chat about this stuff. I feel like the time went super quick, man. Here we are, we're done already. I'm sure you'll be out in Colorado, right, for NALI, for the conference. If you wanted to chat with him in person, make sure you go out to that event. We'll put a link in the show notes, and we'll put a link to contact Troy as well.
Yeah, contact me, because again, I'm here to help anyone. If you've been in it 6 months, or 3 years or under, there's not a dumb question. The old saying is, the only dumb question is the questions not asked. So put my info there. Reach out to me, and I'll help you in any way I can.
Yeah, I think the big takeaway from this interview here is that if you have an accident case, you need to analyze it for any potential product liabilities. It could open up doors for your client. And that's something that maybe we overlook, but it's definitely an avenue that folks should consider for sure.
Yep. Yeah, because there are, even if you look at the case and you go, that's a dead loser. No, do not approach, do your due diligence, do the due diligence, because I've looked at many, many cases that I thought there's no way. But once I got into the investigation, what I discovered was, wow.
Yeah, that's amazing. So,
yeah.
All right, Troy, thank you so much. Thanks everyone for tuning in, and we'll catch everybody next time on the next episode. Take care.
Thanks for checking out the show. Thank you to Troy for jumping on and giving us the rundown on how to investigate these cases. We also want to thank Four Pillars Insurance Research for sponsoring the show. Additional thanks to Scope Now, TrackOps, and PI Institute for Education for sponsoring our podcast. Don't forget about the investigatorstoolbox.com. Just type in Perspectives 50 to save $50 when you join. And please follow Matt and Satellite Investigations on LinkedIn. If you have a question or a comment about the show, email Matt at matthews@satellitepi.com. You can also find him on LinkedIn, Instagram, and Facebook. We want your feedback to bring you the best shows possible. And we'll be back next week with a new show. So make sure you tune in. Stay safe out there.